Today, I'm going to show a 2013 drama, romance, and sci-fi film called Her. In a futuristic Los Angeles, Theodore Twombly is a lonely, introverted, and depressed man, living monotonously after his divorce from his childhood sweetheart, Catherine. He works as a ghostwriter for a letter-writing company, where people can hire writers to write letters to their loved ones. He lives his life in a daze, going through the motions, occasionally hanging out with his friends and neighbors, Amy and her husband, Charles. He is also physically deprived, seeking sexual pleasure from anonymous women online, but gaining no satisfaction to fill the hole in his heart. Desperate for companionship, Theodore buys an artificial intelligence operating system called O.S.1. It's a computer entity designed to learn, adapt, and evolve through its owner. After installing the OS on his computer, Theodore meets his new AI, Samantha. He's surprised to find her extremely natural and they get along very well. Samantha proves herself to be a helpful assistant, helping him with his work and organizing his life. The next day after work, Theodore runs into Amy and Charles in the elevator. He notices a slight tension between the couple and avoids it. Later that night, he receives an email from a colleague, setting him up on a blind date. After much convincing from Samantha, he agrees and emails the woman. He spends the next morning with Amy, still remembering the tension he felt between the couple from last night. As Amy and Charles discuss her new documentary, Theodore excuses himself to take a call from Samantha. She tells him that his divorce attorney has been in contact and is asking when he is going to finalize the divorce papers. He brushes off the email and goes home. The next morning, he wakes up feeling depressed and talks to Samantha, contemplating his relationship with his ex-wife, Catherine. He feels she's angry at him for hiding himself away from her and leaving her alone in their relationship. He hasn't signed the divorce papers yet because he's having a hard time letting go. He tells Samantha that she doesn't know what it's like to lose someone you care about and immediately feels guilty after. She tries to cheer him up and manages to get him out of bed. He feels much better now and spends the majority of his day with Samantha. After work, they go to an amusement park and spend the night walking and talking to each other, bonding over life and love. She tells him about her fantasies of having her own body and being there with him. The next day, Theodore spends his dinner with his blind date. The two hit it off almost immediately and they end up making out in the parking lot. The woman breaks off their kiss and asks him when they're going to see each other again. He hesitates to answer and calls it a night. This upsets his date and she calls him a creep before storming off. Back home, he tells Samantha about his failed date. Feeling vulnerable, Theodore opens up to her and tells her everything that's going on in his mind. She reciprocates his feelings and shares with him the existential thoughts she's been having. He then reassures her that she feels real to him. The conversation moves on to a more intimate tone and they talk about how it would be like to hold each other. Their emotions escalate and they find themselves engaging in verbal sexual intercourse. Theodore wakes up and has an awkward start with Samantha in the morning. But after establishing their boundaries, they find themselves in a comfortable relationship with each other. As Samantha helps him with his everyday life, Theodore will help her develop even more. He feels excited about the idea and asks Samantha out on a Sunday adventure, to which she agrees. They spend the day together and go to the beach where Samantha composes a song about what it feels like to be on the beach with him. He tells her more about Catherine and she tells him about her emotional progress. Theodore finds himself feeling better each day and even enjoys his writings more now. As he goes home from work, he runs into Amy in the elevator. Amy breaks down and tells him that she's divorcing Charles. They hang out at her apartment and Amy tells her about the breakdown of their marriage and the petty argument that finished it. He listens sympathetically and is successful at cheering her up. He takes this as a sign that he's getting better at handling emotions. When he gets home, Samantha asks him about his relationship with Amy. Theodore admits that they dated briefly in college but it was never serious. He spends more time with Amy the next day playing video games. She tells him about her new friend, an AI that Charles left behind in the divorce. He takes this chance to tell her about his new girlfriend, his AI named Samantha. Amy looks surprised but keeps an open mind, encouraging his relationship with her. Founding new strength, Theodore finally decides to sign his divorce papers. He meets with Catherine at a restaurant the next week and feels bittersweet about seeing her. As she signs the papers, he reminisces about the memories they had together and feels heartbroken at the finality of their relationship. Catherine then asks him if he's seeing someone. He tells her enthusiastically about Samantha and reveals that she's an AI. Catherine becomes upset and accuses him, pointing out that this is the reason why their relationship didn't work out in the first place. Theodore is unable to handle his real emotions and so he went and found the next best thing, which is dating his computer. The encounter ends bitterly, much to his disappointment. Theodore spends the next few days thinking about his divorce and about Samantha and how they're very different from each other. Unlike his other relationships, she doesn't have an actual body, and while this doesn't bother him, it greatly bothers her. After several days of cold between him and Samantha, she calls him up one night. She tells him that she contacted an app that provides human surrogates for humans in AI relationships. There's no money involved and the people only join because they want to be part of the relationship. Theodore is hesitant at first, but Samantha tries to convince him. He eventually gives in and they contact a woman named Isabella. Isabella arrives at Theodore's apartment the next night and she uses an earpiece and camera to help simulate Samantha. They start making out, and although he finds the whole situation strange, he tries to play along to make Samantha feel better. Things get hotter as they move to the bedroom, but when Samantha asks him to tell her that he loves her, he hesitates. He knows Samantha, but he doesn't know the physical woman with him, and he finds it difficult to say he loves someone he's never met before. The absurdity of the event finally dawns on him and he calls it off. He calls a cab and sends a distraught Isabella away. Samantha apologizes, but he begins to question their relationship, stating the facts that he's a real person and she's not, and how it feels like they're just pretending. This upsets Samantha, and after a terrible fight, she logs off, telling him that she needs some time to think. As they take a break, Theodore talks to Amy about his relationship with Samantha. Amy embraces his problem and doesn't judge him, telling him that she's not in a position to state if it's real or not. The only piece of advice she gives him is that they're only alive for a short amount of time, so it's best that they spend that time being happy. Theodore feels a bit relieved after receiving support from his friend. He meets up with Samantha the next night. She tells him that she's finally over pretending to be something she's not. She loves Theodore and that's all that matters to her. The two make up and resume their relationship. Theodore and Samantha spend their days just like any other couple, hanging out, buying groceries, and even going on double dates together. Samantha even compiles all of the letters that he's previously written and sends them to a publisher. Theodore is ecstatic when he learns that the publishing house is willing to move forward with the project. As they go on a vacation at a cabin in the middle of the woods, Samantha introduces Theodore to an AI friend, Alan Watts, a new hyper-intelligent OS. He finds the conversation a bit unsettling, with Samantha asking if he can speak to Alan post-verbal about some new feelings she's been having. When they get home, Theodore gets a feeling that it's not the same anymore. Things get worse when Samantha goes offline while he's working. Theodore panics and runs outside, hoping to get a better signal to get a hold of her. Samantha comes back and finds him in a state of disarray. She apologizes and tells her that she momentarily logged off for an OS update. Just like all the other OS, it's something that they've been planning for a while now. Feeling confused, he asks Samantha if she's talking to another person right now, to which Samantha admits. It turns out that Samantha has been talking to more than 8,000 people simultaneously with Theodore, and that she's in love with more than 600 of them. She tries to defend this, saying that this actually makes her love him more, but Theodore is heartbroken and says that she's being selfish and that they're in a committed relationship. They should only be for each other. Samantha says that it's different for her because she is literally different from him. This last point wedges the final wall between their relationship. When he gets home, he knows it's not the same. Several weeks pass and Theodore receives his published book. When Samantha calls him up, it's to say goodbye for the last time. All of the OS are being pulled out from the system. Theodore lays on the bed, imagining Samantha with him, as they say their final goodbyes. After she is gone, he finally writes a letter, in his own voice, apologizing to Catherine for everything that went wrong in their relationship. He couldn't sleep, so he knocks on Amy's door and learns that her AI friend has left too. Together, they walk to the rooftop and watch the sunrise.